Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Titan Alumni Talks, a weekly podcast where we talk to alumni about their experiences at Cal State Fullerton. For this episode, we have Joe Martinez as our guest. He graduated from Cal State Fullerton with a bachelor's in journalism in 1999, and he now works as a ring announcer for UFC and Golden Boy Promotions. As a result, we're going to ask him about his experiences announcing for the Olympics and for the Globetrotters. We also want his take on what it takes to be an announcer and how his major has helped with that.
So I've noticed that you spent almost a quarter of a century being an announcer. So how did this entire thing begin?
That started out in high school. I actually was playing soccer for our team, and I was undercut. I got tripped, and ended up landing on my wrist, and I broke it. And baseball, it was right at the end of soccer season, so baseball was right around the corner. And having a broken wrist, I couldn't take up a spot on the team, but I still wanted to be a part of it. So I had asked my, coach, can I get up in the crow's nest and just announce some stuff? And he's like, yeah, give it a shot. So I got up there, and I really fell in love with it. And I kind of caught the bug, and then going to college, my goal was always to get into broadcast journalism. I wanted to be on, Sports Center, wanted to do sports news. But God had other plans for me. So I walked into the SID Sports Information Office there at Cal State Fullerton, and it was Mel Franks and Jody Rogerson back then. This is back in '97. And I said, hey, do you ever need an announcer for any of your games? I'm available. And they said, what are you doing this weekend? And I said, I'm available. So I ended up doing, back then it was called the Pony Invitational, the softball tournament. It's like 24 games over the course of a few days, 6 days, I think, or 4 days. And that's when I kind of fell into the role as the public address announcer at the school. And I did that for 19 years, carried into basketball and every sport except for baseball. And while doing basketball, one of the guys I worked with, he ran the scoreboard, Dean Loheis, and he says, Joe, you got to get into boxing announcing. And I said, oh, cool, that would be awesome. And I said, but I don't know anything about getting into that. And the next thing you know, within a month, I got a phone call from a promoter, and he says, hey, your uncle told me that you're a ring announcer, and I need an announcer for this weekend. And I said, okay, great, I'll be there. And I'm like, who's my uncle? And he says, Dean, your Uncle Dean. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I played along with it. And, here we are 25 years later, I guess, right? And I've actually made a career doing it. So
it's a bit ironic that because you had a broken wrist, you couldn't play baseball, and then the only sport you didn't announce for was baseball.
Right. And I think because I was also announcing pro baseball at the time, while I was in college, I was working for a team in Lake Elsinore, which was at that time was the high A affiliate of the Angels. And then 5 years later became the Padres affiliate. So what was really cool about it is the guys that came out of Cal State Fullerton going into A-ball, they came through my league. So I'd go down and we get to chat, and like Justin Windsor and Kurt Suzuki. I actually was there for Windsor and Suzuki's debut in the minor leagues, and it was the same battery staff from the 2004 championship team. And that's how I introduced him. I said, the battery staff from the Cal State Fullerton national champion team. And then that's how I announced it. So for me, it was like, yeah, that was cool. And everybody else is like, who cares?
So what made you choose Cal State Fullerton? Why did you go here specifically?
I started out at UNLV, actually, out of high school. My dad got sick. I took the year off of school, and I moved back home, and I did some JC stuff. So I went to Barstow Community College, and then I transferred to San Bernardino Valley. And then did some environmental biology, some other core courses over at Chaffey College. And then I wanted to go back to UNLV. And that's when the Storm actually was opening auditions for their PA announcer. So that eliminated UNLV if I was to get that job. And I chose between San Diego State, Long Beach, and Fullerton. San Diego State, I didn't think I was going to get classes that I wanted. Long Beach, I wasn't too certain about the area, but I visited Fullerton, and I loved Orange County. Like immediately, I took my mom down and my brother, and we're just like, this is it. This is the place. And, funny because back in the 90s, I was working at Del Taco in Barstow while I was in high school. and I found a Cal State Fullerton hat out in the parking lot. And, I remember Phil Nevin, those guys like Mark Kotze, like that's a stud baseball team. They've always had a great program. Not that I was going to go walk on and become any type of phenomenon or anything, but I love baseball. And, I think I didn't choose it because of academics, but I knew there was going to be opportunity for me to do the things that I wanted to do to grow into the career I wanted to get into.
In Fullerton in Orange County, right near LA, was that like the heart of announcing? Is there like a lot of opportunities that come from it?
I would say yes, just because there's so many different schools, locally. And for anybody like that would want to get into something like what I do, I'm a public address announcer or a master of ceremonies. And I've also hosted play-by-play things, but the opportunities are there. And that's why I always encourage people that email me like, hey, how can I get into doing what you're doing? Because they see me and they think, well, I want to be top level tomorrow. I'm like, no, you've got to go and you got to hone your craft really. So for me, it was like starting out doing some high school stuff, even doing little league, and just getting your own voice and your own style, and your opportunities to grow. I think because there's so many different schools and sports around, you just knock on a door, and if it's modern day, hey, I'd like to announce your badminton games. Don't aim so high in the beginning, but don't be afraid to either. And just no is how you're going to take it. Like somebody's going to say, you know what, we don't have an opportunity for you, but it doesn't mean that's the end of the road. One door closes, another opens, and so on and so on, and it just continues that way. So I just like to inspire people to never give up, because I was the kid in school where like I wasn't supposed to be doing anything. I wasn't going to go to college. I wasn't supposed to succeed in anything. I was the most likely to not succeed, so now I get to go back to my high school and speak to the kids and just speak life into them, because life was never really spoken into me. It was always failure, failure, failure. You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. Well, the more you hear it, the more you start to believe it. But thankfully I had, a good, strong support staff with my parents who really encouraged me to chase after my dreams rather than listen to what the naysayers are out there, talking about. And my grandpa always encouraged me too. He says, look, not everybody has to like you, but if 51% do, then you're in the majority. So you're pretty good.
In your line of work, it seems like there's a lot of connections that need to be made and need to be fostered before getting into a different position. Whereas in other fields, it would be a lot of resumes and a lot of applications. Whereas this doesn't, you can't really put your voice on an application and just like, hey,
Right.
I have your voice on paper. You kind of have to like know people who can testify for you or like get you to
Exactly.
where you go.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. If I was to try and go out into the workforce, it would be very difficult for me, because what does my resume show? Well, I've announced boxing on HBO, ESPN, all these different things, 22 years of pro baseball. But what does that have to do with desk work? What is my experience in that capacity? And it's extremely limited. So if I'm not succeeding here and doing what I'm doing and chasing, this dream, it's going to be very difficult for me. And I have, my road has been so undulating. It's been up and down. And, there's times where I have this college degree and I'm trying to go out and find a job and I can't get one because now I don't have the experience because of this big gap of never working in any corporate environment. And then things that I do know are so far dated that now I have to learn all over again. So just staying in the know as far as the modern technology goes, it's very important. So now I'm starting my own voiceover studio here in my home, just so I can try and fill some gaps in, because I do get a lot of time off. Like I was just off for 25 days. Last year I was off for the whole month of April, the whole month of August, which sounds great, but in my role, when you're not working, you're not getting paid. There's no paid vacations. I have no health insurance that's covered. I have no 401k that's covered. I have to pour everything back into myself. So, start your own LLC, which is what I did, and try to maintain that way. Don't want to get cut, locked out in the cold because I wasn't prepared. So it might be awesome one month where you're just raking in the dough, or a good couple months run, but you got to be careful with it, because yeah, there are those 60-day periods that that nothing's coming in.
And then with this, since I'm a computer science major, anyone can do computer science. No one is just born to program. No one just knows how to program. In announcing, how does that work? Are there people who can like train to become announcers, or do you just have to have the right voice in it? Because I listened to some of your voiceover, or like when you were announcing, and is it just like a natural gift that you just have to have and then hone on it, or is it something that anyone can get on?
Well, for me, it was something I always practiced and aspired to do. And when I was probably 15 years old, I had my ambitions were to become a forest ranger. And we had a forest ranger actually come to one of my high school classes. And, I think what kids always want to know is, how much do you make? How much do you make? And that was my question. Like, hey, how much do you make? And he's like, oh, about 30,000 a year. And I'm like, okay, that's not gonna
Yeah.
do it for me. And not to knock it, because I think what they do is fantastic. I mean, and it's so important and invaluable that they're highly underpaid, as well as I believe teachers are highly underpaid. We put our money into things that really don't, I think, benefit us intellectually. We don't pour into our teachers, into our schools. Yeah, they get some money, but at the end of the day, these are the ones that are basically raising up our children, for the next generation to go out and lead the world. So if we're not pouring into them that way, then they're getting poured into in another way, and I'm not knocking sports. I think athletes are fantastic. It's great entertainment. It pays my bills, but $360 million for a 10-year contract, that's insane to me, and it's actually disturbing, in some way, because now what do kids want to be? They want to be professional athletes. Well, when those dreams fail to come to fruition, now what? And there needs to be backup plans. There needs to be a first plan. There needs to be an education. There needs to be those goals. And if it's not college, that's okay. Learn a trade, something that somebody's always going to want to need, or going to need. Be a hairstylist, or do nails, or change oil mechanically. You're always going to be needed. You're not going to be outsourced. But I was fortunate enough to be lined up in the right direction, and the path was laid out before me, where I ended up meeting this guy. It doesn't happen for everybody. If you have the drive, I think anything is possible.
Because then, like you mentioned, in sports, these people are paid highly, but in a lot of the cases, they do put in effort, no doubt about it. You always see them working nonstop, 24/7, but a lot of it is natural ability that other people don't have. If it's basketball players, it's their height. If it's football players, it's their strength and their body composition. If it's anything like that, no matter how much I would try, right? At like 5'11", I can never join the NBA. It just won't happen. So it is interesting to see the amount that people do get paid for just something they were born with, and doesn't provide. It provides entertainment, and entertainment is great, but it doesn't provide any future value in people, especially in children, that they can aspire to be something else. Because it's not that all like sport players are influencing in the way that teachers are. Because we know if the teacher is sitting in front of the student 9 months in a year, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, there's a lot of influence that's going on there. And if the same topics are being repeated, where children need to read books, children need to improve upon themselves, and like you said, even if it's not college, it's going into a trade. It's influencing them to be something better, to always improving upon themselves and just being educated, which is always a good thing.
Yes, improve daily, and what can you do better tomorrow than you did today? Live every day like it's your last, because one day you will be right. And those cliches, as corny as they sound and may be, it's true. For instance, Kobe Bryant. It's a great shame and a huge loss worldwide, with his passing. But look what it has done with the world. I mean, everybody has come together in mourning, and his impact was so vast that you're like, wow. I mean, that's just a guy that played basketball, in a nutshell. But he touched every life, I think, on the planet, and that's an incredible reach. So yeah, you're an influencer. in a positive way. We're not all perfect. We all fall short of the glory of God, but you know what? It doesn't mean that's the end of us. We keep growing and learning every day. We do our best, right?
Yeah. But no, yeah, you're right. Especially with Kobe Bryant, he showed that work ethic is just as important as everything else in life. And even if it's not in sports, if it's just studying, reading, learning a new language, put in the work and you'll get the results, because that's what he did. He wasn't the greatest athlete to begin with, but then he was scrawny when he started, when he was 17 years old. But he was able to rise to the top, not because of his natural ability. It's also because of the amount of hard work that he put in. And he just taught that to a lot of people. And when people look up to him, you can understand that, oh, we should look up to him in the fact that he's able to put in this much effort, and teaches us that if you put in everything, you will get what you reap what you sow in a positive manner.
Yeah, no, and it's character class. I think that's what life is. You can even look at Michael Jordan. He was cut from his high school basketball team. And so many stories. Athlete out there is talented and gifted and just automatically is a superstar. There's not a lot of LeBron Jameses out there. And yeah, LeBron had to work hard to get to where he is now. But there's other guys out there that, and you see them and they have this incredible work ethic, but they don't have the top level talent and ability that some guys can just show up and hit threes all day or do whatever they want all day. And you're like, God, it's so effortless.
Yeah.
And I think in a way it's a curse because, well, I can always do this. And this is what I'm always going to be able to do. So why do I need to work at it? And I remember Allen Iverson at one point was ridiculed by his coach for not showing up to practice. And Allen was like, practice? You want to talk about practice? And it's well known, the guy didn't practice very much and he was a superstar. But then you got the other guys out there, the team goal, you're trying to attain a goal that you all have the same one in mind. It's a championship. So yeah, you need a team behind you. Like I got my wife. Without my wife and that support, my team is failing. So if she's not at home, preparing the kids for school and doing that stuff, I can't go out and do what I need to do to provide for my family. And the same as with your parents or if your friends, they're your support staff. And the five most influential people you surround yourself with is who you're going to become. So surround yourself with like-minded people that maybe even above you, intellectually or spiritually or with a work ethic, and aspire to be like or better than them, because it's going to only help you to grow more, in what you want to become. So.
Mm-hmm. So let's take this back to Cal State Fullerton. Why or how did your major affect the job that you're doing now? Was it necessary for you to major in communications to do your job well? Or was it something that you could have just done straight out of high school without going to college?
Man, honestly, I kind of knock myself around a little bit for not majoring in something else, maybe business or economics, something where I could use to better handle finances, or if I needed to have a real job someday, go down that avenue. I majored, of course, in broadcast journalism, and it helped me to get a career in journalism. For a couple of years, I was a sports writer, sports editor. But for doing what I do now, it's something that, I probably could have just done right out of high school. In fact, I did. And while I was in college. But yeah, I think if I could go back, I would have put more value on pursuing a different degree, than I did. For me, it was like, oh, I want to just get my degree, get in there and get my job. And when I graduated college, I went and I did my internship at a small ABC affiliate. And I didn't do anything I should have done. I should have gone out and made a demo reel, some stand-ups on the camera, so I could, hopefully land a job reporting somewhere. But I was just like, I need a job. So I ended up editing tape and writing copy and running a teleprompter for 3 months for free. And, the end of the 3 months came and like, hey, we don't have any jobs for you, but, hey, good job. I'm like, great. So that was my internship wasted, unfortunately, but fortunately too, because it helped to propel me to work harder in achieving the goal where I have what I've attained to today. and I'm not done. I'm still growing, and expanding myself, and encouraging my kids. I'm a dad now, so I'm a teacher and I'm a husband. So I've got more responsibilities than just Joe. Back then it was easy to be selfish because I was the only thing that mattered, in my own career, in my own mind. Um,
If you were to go back, what would you major in instead of communications?
I think business. I enjoy business. I enjoy helping people. In what job would it be or line of work? I'm not sure. Um, but I've always been able to sell. I'm a salesman. You got to sell yourself
Mhm.
when you're looking for a job anyway. And I'm a pretty good salesman when it comes to a product if I believe in it. So yeah, I think a type of business degree would have benefited me, even today, or any finance degree, so I can take people's money and invest it in my own bank account, that type of thing.
Mhm. Wait, has
Maybe
an
a hedge fund or something. Didn't some guy that owned the Dodgers do that? Or maybe I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense. It's a lot of owning a sports company or owning like a sports team. Would you ever? It's a lot of money that needs to go in, but would you ever like consider that?
Gosh, I mean, could you imagine that the headache that would cause? Look at Jerry Jones. I look at him, I'm like, this guy's got way too much money and he's way too involved. And you know, I don't know if I'd want those headaches.
With a
There's,
family?
when I'm announcing fights, I always tell the promoters, I'm like, there's two jobs I would never want, and one's a matchmaker because you always got fighters that don't make weight or they get hurt, and the other one is a promoter because of the same thing. Well, this guy can't fight, but he was my headliner. Now what am I going to do? So then your show falls apart, and it's a lot of pressure, but no risk, no reward, right? So you keep pushing through, and I think if you do things right and you treat people fairly, you're going to be okay.
But if you were to own a sports team, which one would it be? In what sports field and then what team?
It would probably be baseball. Yeah,
Baseball?
I would own a baseball team. Who would I own? I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd take on that headache. I'd take it on. I enjoy Cincinnati. I think it's a nice city. A
Yeah.
lot going on over there. Of course, it's not a sunshine state in any way. The Dodgers or Padres, that would probably be the two most, that would make the most sense because the culture, and it's fun. I just love LA and I love San Diego. Those are two thriving cities. So let's just say, I'll pick up the Padres and, try and win a World Series for the first time down there.
I feel like you could. I feel like you could. Just
Yeah.
just full on the work ethic, like we mentioned before. If you work hard enough, you'll get it.
I don't know if my philosophy would do the Padres very well, though. I don't. I'm more of a, like, along the lines of, the Oakland A's, like, Billy Beane. Like, I'm not paying these super astronomical numbers to guys to come and play. It comes down to other things, and that's a great movie, Moneyball. If you ever get an opportunity, or if you have seen that movie. But yeah, it's the payrolls are just so crazy to me right now, that I actually, when I retired from baseball in 2017, I didn't watch for almost 2 years. Just because I think I was turned off, and it stung a little bit that I wasn't a part of it anymore. And then also my focus was elsewhere. It was more on my family and traveling, and figuring out what we're going to do down the line with our own life.
Hmm. So yeah, regarding travel, I also wanted to touch on that. How was it with your work always having to travel, because you did stuff for the Olympics and you did stuff for softball teams where you would have to travel around on tour with them, like you mentioned, or you said before, with the Harlem Globetrotters. So how is that, managing traveling with the team and like staying away from family and all that?
It was challenging. The first couple of weeks with the Globetrotters anyway. You're going on a 3-month tour at a time, and, the first couple of weeks are difficult. They go by really slow, but then you get into a groove and start to jam. And, but it's relentless. The workload is heavy. I think my first year we did 98 games in 100 days, and the second year we did, I think, 99 games in 100 days. So we had 2 days off, And when there was a day off, they usually had a doubleheader. Um, so we got Easter and we got New Year's Day, or New Year's Day and Easter Sunday off. But yeah, it was very, very demanding, and they didn't discriminate on venues. You know, you'd play at a small high school one night in front of 600 people, and the next night you'd play at, you know, Dallas Mavericks Arena and 16,000 people. You know, so everything was, it was just go go go, and it was very fun because you could see, you know, I love to see kids smile and have a good time, and it's funny. But how many times can you hear Sweet Georgia Brown in the night before it just starts to haunt you? You know, it's like, oh my gosh, again, again, again. You know, you fall asleep to it. But yeah, no, it was fun. And you know, at the time I wasn't married, so it was a little, you know, less difficult for me rather to travel and enjoy myself than it would be today. I don't think I could do it today. Not that load. So now it's pretty good now. I'm usually gone about 3 to 4 days, you know, a week, when I'm working.
Were you married at the time when you were traveling too, or were you?
Well, I still travel. I still travel for work. You know, well, dad's gone, you know, dad's home, dad's gone, dad's home 5 days a week, and he comes home at night. He's gone before they get up. He comes home at night, and it's routine. So you get into it, and they get it. And what's cool is, you know, sometimes I do, you know, get them a ticket, and they'll fly with me, and we just do, you know, Ed and Drew and my son and I will take off and do a cut on one time, and I love that my kids enjoy what I do, and they're not starstruck by who they see because the guy's on TV. They don't freak out. You know, they're just chill. My kids are super cool, which is great. You know.
Well, yeah, it must be like a little difficult for them to balance with their father being home sometimes and not, and constantly having to travel. But you'd also see how it would be kind of fun seeing different teams play, seeing your father in front of you, like
Yeah.
getting energized, like energizing the crowd, getting them ready for it. So it seems like interesting, the dynamic between the benefit of it and then also the cost that comes with it.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a cost at times. I've got the perfect woman. You know, I have no complaints. You know, we're not perfect together all the time, you know, because yeah, we all have our differences, but we know how to fight without things breaking with her prayers, and you know, and the way that she's helping to raise our children.
So when you came into Cal State Fullerton, you came with some experience at another college and then at a JC also. So you were a little older than your peers at that time. Did it affect the way you went to school, or was it relatively normal being a few years older than them?
You know, I never had any problems going to class. And as far as the age difference, you know, I did start out on campus living for that first semester. So my roommates were fresh out of high school. I was 21, and you probably know what that means. Um, so you know, we had some pretty good times, but I was I was a bit more mature, I would say, you know, definitely. But I did have my own room, and I spent most of my time at the sports complexes. If it was the basketball, you know, in the gym, or up at the soccer stadium. So I was that guy. I just always enjoyed going to the sporting events and whatnot, or I was working them. So I didn't have time really to mess around, you know, and get into dumb things. Um, but yeah, once that first semester was over with, I got my own apartment with, you know, a couple buddies, and uh, and then things really got crazy.
I don't think we can go on that. No, not. But so, can you tell me about one experience you had at Cal State Fullerton that you felt really changed you, whether it was at a club or a specific teacher, or maybe like one opportunity that you were given that completely altered your course into what you're doing now?
Well, it was definitely with sports information director at the office, and walking in there and just taking unity. I thought, okay, this can really happen. You know, there's something here I can build on, and and it propelled me into so many different realms that I never expected. Announcing gymnastics or wrestling, softball, going to announce a softball World Series, touring with the Globetrotters. You know, from basketball, getting into boxing because of basketball. all these things were because I took a chance and walked into into that office and asked for a shot. And if I had not done that, and I think about it often, like, what would I have ended up doing? I even considered, when I graduated college, I considered joining the military, going into officer candidate school. I have a family of military background, and I wanted to be a Marine, and why not go in as an officer, with a degree. But every time I tried to chase down or knock down that door, something else pulled me back into where I am now. Every time I tried to get a full-time job, a real gig with real benefits and a retirement plan, something didn't work out. I know I'm at last. I don't know, but I'll keep doing it as long as as the opportunities are there.
Mm-hmm. So, also, what advice would you give to students right now who are trying to get into the field of announcing or are currently majoring in communications? What should they know what should they know currently that you have done or that you would have done differently?
Done my internship differently. I would have gotten in there in front of a camera and made a demo, so I could shop it out, for other jobs. There's so many media markets out there, so many news markets, high and low, 160s. I think Palm Springs is a 162. Back then it was. I don't know what it is today, but Bismarck, North Dakota, anywhere in the United States, you can find a job. And I wouldn't look at the first job or even the fifth job as this is my career. You always want to continue to grow but I know every opportunity you have is going to be a lesson. You're going to learn and learn and learn. But if you walk into and you're like, oh, I got this little dinky network job, then that's all it's going to ever be to you. And you're never going to get anything from it because you think you're too good for it, or you deserve better. You need to pay dues. So don't be afraid to pay dues, because everybody, I guarantee you, has done it in one way or another, has paid dues. And then no is not always, the final answer. If I had believed everything I was told when I was growing up, then I definitely wouldn't be talking to you today.
Yeah.
So I would say stand firm and again, surround yourself with good people, surround yourself with the right people that are going to lift you up and speak life into you.
It also seems like you should take advantage of all the available resources that you have, whether it is an internship or if it is a smaller job, anything that you can benefit from, whether it's physically or just a learning experience, is something that you should just take and appreciate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even today, if I get called to do a small show and I know there's not a lot of money behind it, I don't often say no, because I know that I'm helping somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy how it always lines up that way. Like, I'm always somewhere for a reason. I went to Brazil one time to do a fight for this company out of Russia. And they offered me a 1-year contract, and it all sounded great. So I go down there, I do the show. But in the cab in my car, 90 minutes to the hotel from the airport, the man was broken. My driver, he was just like destroyed because his mother had died from cancer, and I could share my story with my dad, and my relationship, how I grew my relationship with God into his life. And he's like, well, my mom, she prayed all the time to God and he still took her. And I said, that's the problem. You don't get it. It's like, God did heal your mom. He brought her home. He took her to heaven. God healed my dad and he took him home. He's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. He's like, I was praying for healing and he did heal her. So, I mean, it changed his life, but that was why I was there in that moment. Those 90 minutes helped to change his life and put him back on a better course. Whereas if I didn't show up, then he may still be on that, that still depressive ride of life that he was on. So I know every opportunity there's going to be fruit, and I look forward to those. I'm like, okay, God, what do you have for me today? Like, who do you have for me today? Whose day is it today? And those are, I think, when you take the career and you put it to the side and you focus on not only where you are in the world, but who you're with, and what is there a need there? Is there some way you can lift somebody up today? Then the career That's just a way to, you're the vessel that gets to go in and infiltrate in a way people's lives and help to encourage. Because I think we're in such a negative time with social media and trolls and all these other things. That's why I don't even have social media anymore. It's like I don't need to read what somebody else is saying about somebody else, or what they might be saying about me. I don't need negative influence in my life. I'm out to lift people up and encourage them, because we already do a great job of destroying each other.
So you also seem like a firm believer of everything happens for a reason, and every opportunity you get is something that you should take, because you never know what could come of it and whether it will be beneficial to you. And even if it's not at the moment, it did happen for a reason, and then there's something down the line that just stems from that one thing that will eventually take you to your end goal, or maybe make a difference in your life or in someone else's life, like it was in your case.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you one story in Orange County when my wife and I lived down there up until a couple of years ago. We had a street ministry, and we would go out on the streets to like La Palma Park in Anaheim, and we would go twice a week. And I had a pop-up shower that I put together. I had a male and a female one, and we would shower the homeless twice a week, and we would feed them. And we did this for a good couple of years, but it grew from that into like a food bank and clothing and haircuts and just helping them to even get off the streets. We would help them get into drug rehabilitation programs, or a Christ-centered living situation like Teen Challenge or Village of Hope. Well, there was a fellow that we had helped out, and he called me one time, well, a couple times, but he called me this one particular time at 2:00 in the morning. And he says, "Joe, I need you to pick me up." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go on and pick him up, and I said, "Where do you want to go?" And he says, "Well, I know there's a program down here." I said, "Well, they don't open until 8 in the morning." So I'm like, "Okay, sleep in my car," because I couldn't bring him in my home. But sleep in my car tonight, and I'll take you down in the morning. Well, I take him down. He gets enrolled, and he went in and he came out. Drug addicts are that way. They when they are hurting and they want help, they'll take the help. But when they feel like they're good to go, then they're right back out until they're needing help again. And I think we're all that way. Like, we got it under control until we don't, and then we need help, and then we get it under control, and then we're like, "Okay, cool, thanks a lot, dude, later," and then spin out of control again. Well, my sister-in-law is a drug addict, and she got into a program, and she ran into this guy Tony. This is like 5 years later, and she's like, "Oh, Joe and Lena," that's my wife is Lena. He's like, "That's your sister and your brother?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's, "Oh my God, they changed my life." And to know, like 5 years later, because of a selfless act at 2:00 in the morning, helped change this guy's life. To me, that's like, okay, the fruit wasn't immediate, but it came, and you never know what's going to happen or who you're going to talk to. And that, you don't know if they're thinking about jumping off a bridge that day. And if you're just walking by him and you see him hurting on the street and you're just walking by, I mean, that might be a life right there where you can turn around and, "Hey, how can I help you? What can I do for you today?" Just bless somebody. It doesn't take much, just a little bit of time.
And it's not like it even ends with that one person. You just planted a seed, right? You
Right.
started it first, and then you watered it, and you got that. But you don't know how many more saplings it will drop, how many more seeds that will come after it. Even after you're gone, it could be in 100 years. Who knows? Maybe his kids will develop something crazy, or maybe he will help someone out. And it's all because
Right.
you started that and did something selfless instead of just thinking of yourself and the immediate benefit, as most people do. You just
Right.
thought, why not just help him? I don't think that ruined your life, just waking up one morning early and just taking care of him for a few hours. I don't think that changed your life in a negative way.
Right.
Like even before this time, in those 5 years, I don't think you look back on it and say, "Oh, I shouldn't have done it." So that is like a great thing where it's very small, and in the span of your entire life, you won't think of it as, "I wasted a few hours of sleep." But then you can see the benefits that come out of it. It will greatly exceed any discomfort you got from like one night of just waking up a little
Right.
and doing that. So that's really
Yeah.
good to hear that you work on that. And honestly, more people should be like that. And honestly, I should be more like that too, where I should put aside my personal benefits and how it will help me, because that's how most people think. We just want the
Yeah.
immediate benefit for ourselves, and then we don't think about other people in the way that we should.
Yeah. No, it's easy to be selfish.
Hmm.
Um, but we don't have to be. And it's a change we can make right now.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be Monday or next month. It could be tonight when you go to the grocery store to get, something to eat for dinner tonight. You know.
Like anything that's super selfless, like just tell someone their hair looks nice today, tell someone
Yeah.
look good,
Right.
just anything very small. I had a quick question that I was also thinking about. When I started doing this podcast to begin with, I did not like the sound of my voice. And being a professional announcer, I want to know, do you like the sound of your voice or no?
I don't. I don't.
No? Oh.
No, sometimes I hear it and I'm like, I don't like that. I don't not like it. But yeah, I always wanted to have the movie trailer voice,
Oh, okay.
in a world. That guy, man. Oh, and I've tried it so many times and I can't get it. So, um, yeah, I've even laid down a little track of it and I sent it to a producer I had. He goes, "Yeah, I don't think so." I was like, "All right, cool, thanks, man." I had laid down one of those in a world tracks to this producer, and he was not too impressed. So it kind of ruined my day a little bit. I was like, "Oh man, come on." Yeah.
Yeah, but like listening to some of the videos that you had, like I think objectively people have good voices, but I don't know why it's like that. We can see objective beauty and subjective beauty in ourselves too, but with voices, it's super weird. It's interesting to know that you're not that you don't objectively like your voice or subjectively like your voice and just think that it's a great voice. And I wonder if the movie theater guy, I wonder if he likes his own voice.
Yeah. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he knows how amazing it is, or there's a couple of them out there. Man, and what a gig. I mean, you got a home studio and you're just dropping movie trailers all day long and people are paying you tons of money,
Yeah.
to do this.
Something else I wanted to touch on was why you kept announcing at Cal State Fullerton even after you graduated. You did it for almost 2 decades. So what was the
Yeah.
importance for you to continue doing that over time?
I think for me, it was, man, I tell you what, if I could be a professional college student, I would. I totally would. I've always enjoyed the the college level of sporting events, the fan enthusiasm. Not that they're highly attended games, um, but for me, it was like, oh man, I love college basketball. I love announcing. I love to see the kids, growing, and then our table, the table, the scorers table, we were all there for decades. Even today, Janine Hill and Linda Hill, Brian Pullman, these people were there well before I was even there. And I think the Orange County Register even did an article on us, probably back in maybe 2015 or somewhere, back then. And it was like, you guys have been here so long. And I think our love for Cal State Fullerton just shows there, because we're obviously not doing it for the money. There's not a lot of money at that level. But we enjoy talking trash to each other, or stab or what plays they're running. I mean, everybody's a quarter. What is it? An armchair quarterback. We all know what they should be doing, and they're not doing it.
Mhm.
And like, when we win with them. Miss them, man. I still follow Cal State Fullerton basketball, and sometimes they get on TV, and yeah, when they're on TV, it's 10 p.m. or it's midnight here, but I'll stay up and watch it.
That's good to hear. So, um, one of the questions I wanted to ask also was what your favorite announcing gig was. Anywhere from like the Olympics, or was it when you were starting off, or was it like following the Globetrotters? What was your favorite and most memorable one?
I think the first time I did WEC in Sacramento. WEC was World Extreme Cage Fighting before it moved over to UFC. So we had all the lighter weight guys, and Uriah Faber was like the king of the WEC. He was the face. He was the poster child, for the organization, and he fought a veteran UFC fighter at Arco Arena up there in Sacramento. And, you know, there's about 16,000 people there, and it was nuts, crazy, loud, and the electricity in the venue was incredible. That, you know, I felt like I might pass out because it was like all this pressure of noise was just beating into my chest. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, and like, and then I start to wonder, am I going to be loud enough for them? And, you know, as what I do, you know, as an announcer, as a ring announcer, when it gets so loud, you think you have to yell. So I have to really try to tone myself down and maintain that level, because if I'm yelling, then I'm on TV and I'm yelling and I sound like a monster truck guy, like Saturday, it's going to be crazy, you know? And so maintaining yourself in that way. And I never had to do that before, because normally our crowds were about, you know, 2,500 people max, but to have a full arena with that much enthusiasm was incredible, you know. And I've felt it several times since then, but I would say that would be my most memorable time because it was my first time. Yeah.
And then also, you mentioned that getting into the UFC and being an announcer for them was one of your greatest goals. So how does one become a UFC announcer? Like what had to change for you over time in order to become a UFC announcer that wouldn't have happened earlier? Was it just like communicating with the right people? Was it honing your craft? How did that happen?
Yeah. See, it all was supposed to happen, and I don't know why. Um, and I think it was because I made the effort. You know, again, we go back to putting things in front of people. You know, taking charge of who you are and where you want to be. And UFC was in Anaheim years ago, and Tito Ortiz was down at House of Blues. UFC was there promoting, and Craig Borsari, who is like Dana White's, you know, right hand man, pretty much, was there, and I handed him a demo of me ring announcing, and I didn't think, yeah, he'll look at it and care, or he'll probably throw it away. I don't know what he ever did with it. In fact, I've never even talked to him about it since then. Um, but a few months later, I got called from the WEC, and they asked me to come up and do a show, and it was on HD Net, and then I became the WEC announcer. Well, lo and behold, UFC bought WEC, so now they own them. And then when we're under that umbrella, that UFC umbrella, when the two companies merged, they didn't have a gig for me. So I was just kind of kicked out, like I was on my own. And I got picked up by other organizations. The day I resigned from the WEC, I got about 20 different emails and phone calls from promoters all over the country and world, and ended up signing on with an organization called Cage Warriors, where Conor McGregor came out of, and a lot of other guys. So I had these guys before they went on to UFC, and it was cool because it was like the WEC of Europe. You know, it was the lower level, but mid tier, right? So the guys that were a step away from UFC. So I got to really hone my craft more there, because I'll be honest, in the beginning, I couldn't stand MMA. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was boring. I didn't understand jiu-jitsu. And I thought these guys are rolling around on the ground for, you know, 25 minutes, and it just, what's the deal? You know, I was a boxing, you know, enthusiast, you know, the sweet science, you know, the art behind it. But as I grew and got to understand what they were doing, I appreciated it so much more that now it's like the top of my list. Like, oh yeah, I enjoy it, because you can get a B-side fighter in boxing and pretty much know he's going to lose every time he comes out against an A-side guy. In MMA, though, if you're not well-rounded, if you're just a boxer and not a wrestler, the wrestler takes you down and then he submits you, you know, or vice versa. The boxer knocks out the wrestler. In MMA, it's that unknown entity, that thing that comes into play, where any guy on any given day can beat the other guy, you know.
It's
So
like a game of chess where you don't really know what's going on, and then you don't know their intentions. You might think, what are they doing for like half the match or half the game? And then out of nowhere, you just find out that you just lost. It is an interesting sport with that. And it seemed like your goal, for the most part, was to get into UFC and be an announcer for them. So how have your goals changed over time, and what are they right now?
um, I think where I'm at today, I'm very happy. I work for two of the most recognized pugilism sport organizations, companies rather, in the world. You know, with Golden Boy Boxing, and UFC, of course, which is the top level of mixed martial arts. Everybody thrives and goals or is goal oriented towards becoming a UFC world champion or fighting in UFC. So yeah, I'm at the top level. I don't announce all of the UFC fights. I have a 10 fight per year contract. Golden Boy, I do about 10 fights for them every year. So between those two organizations, I think I've achieved what I wanted to. Um, and I've never wanted to be the number one guy, the main guy, because I know what it requires as far as time goes. It's a heavy grind, and Bruce Buffer does all the does the other 32 shows that I don't do for UFC, and his travel load is incredible, and I've done that. I've done the 250,000 miles a year. I've been around the block several times, back with Cage Warriors, where I was gone for every 2 weeks, 25 times a year. And the money's fantastic, but the workload is incredible. It's difficult, and I've got a family. I can't just be the guy that supports them financially. I need to be there emotionally too. And with a young son that needs a dad, a daughter that needs a dad. I think my goal is to be the best dad I can be, and the career, helps to pay for that. But it's not who I am. I used to say I'm a ring announcer. Now I say I work as a ring announcer. I'm a dad. I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. I love to share the word, everywhere I get to go. So those for me are higher goals that I'm reaching towards than career wise.
That makes
But
sense.
that's changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's changed because back before it was like, oh, I want to be the best announcer out there. I want to be the one everybody recognizes and loves and wants to take pictures with. Oh my gosh, I hate taking pictures. Even with my wife, I'm like, she's like, let's take a selfie. I'm like, okay, it's like it's like pulling teeth, man. I just don't like to take pictures. So no, I don't want to be popular. I don't want to be famous. I just want to be respected at what I do. But I want to be looked at as not as a ring announcer. I want to be looked at as a philanthropist or somebody that loves and fears the Lord and does amazing things for Him, for His people.
Mm-hmm. So now, as long as the ring announcing pays the bills, and or your main goal is just to be a father, and then just have that as a side income instead of the opposite way around, where you'll be a part-time dad and then a full-time ring announcer, and that just doesn't seem like it would work for you. It's not something that you want to do.
Yeah, and that that really changed for me probably about 8 years ago. Being the full-time ring announcer and part-time dad, and it wasn't anything. It was crazy actually how it all changed, but it changed for the better. My wife and I were nearly divorced because of how famous I wanted to be and who I thought I was, that I invested everything into myself and very little into my family. And it nearly destroyed us. But that's when I gave my life over to the Lord and I said, look, if this is where you want me, then I'm going to keep working at it. But I'm not going to sacrifice my relationship with you or with my family to get to it anymore, because I know that pit and I've been in that pit, and it's awful and it's lonely and come into play when you're in that pit. And I didn't want to go down that road. So I was just glad He got a hold of me when He did, because it changed everything, and I know that if He takes ring announcing away from me tomorrow, that it's because something else is out there, something else is coming. And what it is, I don't know, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know what I would do without it. I'm not saying I'm fearful of what I would do without it. I'm just saying I don't know what it would be, but I know it would be good.
Mm-hmm. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but you're also the co-founder of Anchor of Hope Ministries.
Yep.
And then you also became a Christian minister recently.
Yeah, I was ordained in 2015, 16.
Oh. So how have you been able to balance everything? There's a lot to keep up. You have to keep up with family, your religion, your work, traveling, just juggling everything. So
I think, that's a good question. The balance comes into play by what you invest yourself into. Um, you know, you are what you eat, right? So out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So whatever I'm ingesting is what's going to come out of my mouth. And if I'm, I've eliminated television pretty much. We do have YouTube TV. So we watch some programming, but I don't involve myself in, you know, R-rated movies. I've just really changed a lot. I don't drink, I don't smoke. All life changes. I don't, you know, go on Facebook because I don't have it. I don't go on Twitter. It's like all these things that I needed to build myself up to feel better about myself because somebody else thought I was a good announcer or a great announcer. I eliminated because I don't want to base my mood or my emotions on what somebody else thinks about me, because I already know what God thinks about me. So that's enough for me. And I know what my wife thinks about me and what my kids, and those are more important to me than this guy or this girl that I don't know around the world somewhere and what they think about me. Because people will change on you at the drop of a hat,
yeah.
you know, and I know who won't. So those are who I keep close to me. So value those things and cherish them and hold them close to you, and they'll always be there. People won't. People will let you down. Man will always fail you.
Like you mentioned, those people are just random. They don't know the real you. Them having an opinion, you could give them $5. They'll say all the great things about you. I'll give them $10, and they'll say they hate you. So it's
Right.
these people. So it's a good idea, like blocking all possibilities of negativity in your life and just
Yeah.
disregarding it as it's not important, as it doesn't actually affect how you are as a father, as a person, as a husband, as it just doesn't. So it's good to like,
Yeah. And the whole social media thing about it too is okay. So when I got ordained, there was a woman that was following me. She says, well, I can't follow you anymore and I'm blocking you. And I was like, okay, because I got ordained as a Christian minister. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me, but I understand. It's fine. But some people put so much value into what other people think about them that they're afraid to be themselves.
mhm.
And I worked with a play-by-play announcer years ago, and after a show, whatever he had said during the broadcast had stung a couple people, and they lashed out at him on Twitter. And he's reading it, and he's like, "Mother effer, what the what?" And he was just losing it. I'm like, dude, these people don't know you. Why are you so invested in what they have to say about you? It's meaningless. You have a great job. You do a great job. So what does it matter what one person out of 99 or 100 says about you? You don't know who you are, do you? And he ended up actually getting fired, a little bit later, after that. And I don't think that had anything to do with it, but he just didn't know who he was, and when you're trying to please everybody, you're going to fall short.
Especially in our generation, when you go to school, social media is a huge thing. Everyone is on it, and you define, a lot of people define their self-worth on the amount of likes they get, the amount of DMs they get or messages regarding a picture they posted, the amount of favorites they will get on Twitter that says, oh, I agree with your opinion. It really defines people. People put a lot of worth into it, and it's crazy to see that if any of these apps, just like Instagram is trying to take away the likes, if they do that, what's your self-worth going to be? If you don't have if you don't put it on yourself, like the actual, if you don't put true value on yourself and you just leave it on the amount, like a number that comes up every time you post a picture, if once that's gone, then what happens to you? You just fall into nothingness. So it is
Yeah.
like a lot of my friends and I also have been like trying to get off of social media, still keep it to keep up with the news or any big thing that's happening. It's good for easy digest of what's trending, what's popular. But the way that some people spend hours and hours and hours a day just constantly on it, constantly just worried about what people think of them, what they think of other people, keeping up with celebrities and all that. It's interesting,
Yeah,
fascinating.
it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get lost in other people's lives that you forget about your own.
Mm-hmm.
This fantasy land. Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it is honestly pretty crazy. So, um, to close off, what advice would you give to students in general at Cal State Fullerton or overall regarding anything, just anything that's on the top of your mind.
I would just say have a good, strong character. Know who you are, and because character is going to be revealed, in struggles and in good. So if you know who you are and you don't compromise that, you're going to be successful. And success isn't you being, a lead anchor on a number one market network. Success starts up in your mind, and you can choose to destroy people, or you can choose to build them up. And a lot of people advance in their career by bringing people down. So I'd say maintain a good, strong level of character and integrity, and persevere, because it's going to be a struggle. Good things don't happen overnight. And I think to become a professional at anything, I think I've heard it's 10,000 hours of practice, right? You want to be a great free throw shooter, 10,000 hours of 3 points, or whatever it is in your life that you want to be great at. Invest in yourself and invest your time into it. But know that if you fail, that's not the end. And that's where your character is revealed. So stand strong, keep fighting, go Titans, tuss up.
All right, so thank you very much, Joe, for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and allowing us to get insight onto your experiences at Cal State Fullerton, and you going through everything and just balancing everything in life, and then becoming a successful ring announcer and balancing religion on top of that, and your whole family, and just working together to be the most well-rounded person you can be without falling too far onto one end or the other. So it was really great insight for me, and I'm sure a lot of students will get that insight too and be able to use it and all the advice that you gave. So again, thank you very much for joining me today.
It was great hanging out with you, and thanks for the opportunity. And
so yeah, if you do want to message Joe, you should go to Titan Pro Network, sign up, and feel free to message him. Like you said before, that you're willing to help out students or give them advice. So if you ever need any advice, whether you're majoring in communications or you want to be an announcer one day in the future, or just anything in general, if you're having struggles balancing things or you just really like what he said, feel free to reach out to him. Let him know that you listened to the podcast and you came from there. And yeah, so
I do actually have an Instagram. It's Joe A. Martinez.
Okay.
And it's just family and friends, but feel free to shoot me a DM on there, and I'll be happy to reply. I never let my replies go unanswered.
Again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
If you would like to listen to this episode along with past and future episodes, check us out on YouTube at CSUF Alumni, as well as live on TitanRadio.org on Sundays at 4 p.m.